But let's start with the game that just ended, not all that far from here at the cozy confines of SoFi Stadium just outside Los Angeles. Mexico and Venezuela. Venezuela winning the game 1-0 thanks to a Salomon Rondon penalty in the 57th minute. Mexico had a penalty attempt of their own from Orbelin Pineda with about 5 minutes to go in regulation, but he could not finish. And so Venezuela go top of Group B, 6 points from their first 2 games. Only one man who could start the discussion of this match on this panel. It's a man who's part of the Venezuela team that went all the way to the semis back in 2011. Alejandro Moreno, the floor is yours.
Well, you said there's only one man that can actually speak to this result. There's only one thing to say.
I'm waiting for it. I know.
Vamos, Venezuela! Vamos! Vamos, Venezuela! And can I just say, there are many angles that you can take in this match, and I'm sure that you're going to be really upset with Mexico and frustrated.
I'm always upset at something.
So on and so forth, and we'll get to that in a second. The first 25 minutes of the second half for Venezuela is what has you, or has me, as a Venezuelan fan and as a country, thinking so many big thoughts and dreaming so many big dreams with this group. Because in what was a very evenly played first half, and probably you could argue that Mexico seemed to be carrying, if not the possession, some of the momentum, or most of the momentum going forward. Now, it was evenly played, it was physical.
Some dangerous chances for Mexico.
Salomon Rondon hits a post, but Santi Jimenez has a 1v1 opportunity against Rafa Romo, and he comes up with a save. It's actually a miss hit from Santi Jimenez. So we get to halftime. In years past, and prior versions of Venezuela, as they come into the second half, there would have been an intimidation. There would have been perhaps a thought in the back of their minds to protect first, to, you know what, let's continue to absorb pressure and maybe we get something on a set piece, maybe we go on the counter. Instead, what we saw from Venezuela, and it's not just the players, and I think this is important to point out, it's also the manager, in making the substitutions that he made to address some of the needs of Venezuela on the field so that they could go on the attack, so that they could go on the offensive, so that they could take the initiative away from Mexico. And it is what happened in the first 25 to 30 minutes in that second half, where it was all Venezuela all the time. You talk about opportunities. Soltero has a great opportunity where he dribbles the defender, takes it to the outside, goalkeeper makes a good save. But beyond that, there were just half chances, and you could feel the momentum. And Salomon Rondon was always dangerous, and he was always willing to hold up the ball or get in behind or always get involved. And you get the team sort of feeling a whole lot better about themselves, and potentially out of a very good play down the right-hand side. It is a penalty kick, 100% a penalty kick. Salomon Rondon takes it, 1-0 Venezuela. You think they're going to take a step back? Well, no, they didn't. They actually kept going forward. Eventually, Salomon Rondon ran out of legs, and I think that's important for Venezuela because you lose that focal point of a guy who can actually hold the ball up. Mexico had no other choice but to push numbers forward, and they really pushed Venezuela back. It was a combination of Mexico being desperate and Venezuela saying, we'll protect, protect, protect. I must confess, I may not have looked at while I was watching it, but I may have been a little nervous when I kept seeing that line getting further and further and further and further back, and our center back will continue to be a source of stress. I have a lot of stress in my life, but they are a source of stress for me. And for whatever reason, they're allowing the ball to bounce in the box and miss clearances and so on and so forth, tension, but eventually Venezuela see it through. And what a big, and I mean big result this is for Venezuela. If I'm not mistaken, if I know my Venezuelan soccer history, this is the first time ever in the history of Copa America that Venezuela has won 2 games at the group stage. And we're through, baby. We don't have to stress anymore. Pass on the stress to somebody else.
Yeah, that's right. Mexico going to have a lot of that stress in the coming days. Aside from the penalty spot, where did Venezuela beat Mexico in this game?
Salomon Rondon. I mean, he's the heartbeat of this team. As he got stronger, Venezuela got stronger. You could see him bringing down balls to Soteldo, and they were going on the counter. They were going in with the initiative in the final third, being aggressive. In the midfield, with Cáceres Jr. coming in, Batista brought him in. He was very good, how he was driving forward. Those first 20 to 25 minutes for Venezuela were very good. And then you see Venezuela, because they're trying to hold on to a result, and Mexico are pushing numbers forward, come into a shell. And I thought they were very fortunate to come out with a 1-0 win, but it's a win, and it's an important win. But certainly, as Mexico is pressing forward, as they're getting chance after chance after chance, and even a penalty kick, it was really almost a matter of time, but they didn't break. They bent, but they didn't break. So you have to give Venezuela a lot of credit for how they did this. I just thought the second half, the midfield completely ran over Luis Chavez, completely ran over Luis Romo, who was very good for Mexico in the first game. In the second half of this game, for that 30-minute stretch that Ali's talking about, he was non-existent. Cesar Montes ends up leaving with an injury. All of a sudden, your spine, talking about Memo Ochoa, not in this tournament. He's gone, starting goalkeeper. You're talking about Cesar Montes, your starting center back. He's out now. You're talking about Edson Alvarez, your captain, defensive midfielder. He got injured. He's not in this game. You're talking about Henry Martin, who was the most reliable forward that Jimmy Lozano, the head coach of the Mexican national team, had. He's not in this game. Santi Jimenez, the one opportunity he did have, he couldn't capitalize. He looked very frustrated in that first half. Everything that could go wrong for Mexico went wrong, and I'm not surprised. I look at this team, and this is the worst generation of Mexican players that I've seen in my lifetime. The worst pool. And then you take out the names that I just mentioned, how could it not go south for them?
Yeah. Worst pool, and I think what has to be said is worst performances. I mean, you can say that the guys aren't playing at the high levels or they're not playing where the guys have been playing in the past, and we can point to Jimmy Lozano, and I think there's a lack of tactical nous there, a lack of control of the team.
He has blame as well.
He has his blame. But my goodness, I mean, you're talking about players who are decent in Liga MX, unable to combine for passes, unable to do anything. Santiago Jimenez scores 20-some goals in the Eredivisie, and he's whiffing on a one-on-one. I mean, this is a group of players who, whatever they do elsewhere, when they come and they put on that green shirt, they seriously underperform. And it's very easy when things go bad in a program to talk federation and coaches and Liga MX. And we did that when the U.S. failed to qualify for the World Cup in 2018. We talked a lot about Sunil Gulati, and we didn't talk about the players. Man, the players for Mexico are bad. Even the good ones are bad when they play for Mexico. And that's something that I just can't get over as a Mexico fan.
You can still blame the federation for why they're bad. You know, these players don't go out. They're not in Europe. There are fewer Mexican players than ever before in Europe. These players within their own domestic league don't get minutes. They're not protagonists in their own teams, in their own league. So all of a sudden, when you put them together, this is what you get. And guess what? Venezuela, they got players in Europe. They're advancing. Panama, they got players in Europe. They're advancing. Jamaica, they got players in Europe. They're advancing. The U.S., they're light years ahead of Mexico today because they have players in Europe and they are advancing. So yes, while these players today are bad, it goes much, much deeper than just these players.
You want one of the Mexican players in Europe? Orbelín Pineda. How about that penalty? I mean, what do you think of that approach to a penalty kick? For me as a fan, it's the most frustrating thing. Of course, it's easy to say that in hindsight because he missed it, but why not just hammer it into the net?
Yeah, he basically hit it with his purse.
Yeah.
Down to the left.
Well, you can say that.
But I agree. I feel like Mexico is no longer considered the giants in CONCACAF. And it's not just because they only beat Jamaica 1-0. That is because of recent form and results, but also today. I mean, they come out, they have a great opportunity against Venezuela to get ahead. They started out really well. And then I just don't understand what Lozano is looking in Jimenez to continue to play him, because I understand he's young, he might be the future, he's building confidence in him, and maybe there's slim options, but he's not producing. And just because you play well in club doesn't mean that's always going to apply at this level. And so that might need to change. The personnel might have to change. And today I saw a Venezuela team come out in the second half, want to win. The effort that was there, the resilience, the confidence, the combination play, the way that they attacked, even the way that they defended, the way that they, just fought for Rondon to till the very end. You could tell that it was a full, complete team performance, even though they didn't start that way at the very beginning of the match. They ended, obviously, fighting for their lives, but you could tell that they wanted to win. They wanted to continue to get into the next rounds and to gain those 3 points. But this is a Mexico side that even from when I was young, I used to really value watching and appreciating the style that they played, and it's just no longer there. And so it's difficult for me to sit here and say that they are on their way to even have a team in the future that's going to be appreciated and valued by their fans, supporters, and federation.
Yeah, it's hard to find a sign of hope right now for Mexico. Go ahead.
Going on to Santi Jimenez, I see a player with so much external pressure and you could see him buckling under that pressure, how frustrated he was in that first half. I mean, he picks up a yellow, not for that foul, because it was one of many fouls and jawing attempts with the players and the referee. The frustrations were boiling over, and then he scuffs that 1v1 opportunity. That's a golden opportunity for any forward, any nine at any level. And this is a guy that may score goals at the club level, but when it comes to the Mexican national team, for whatever reason, he's not found the net consistently. And it just feels like that pressure is boiling over. This was supposed to be his tournament. Whether it was Jimmy Lozano or the Federation, they cleared the way for him to be the 9 in this tournament. Henry Martin, you're out. We know that Jimmy Lozano keeps going back to that Henry Martin well. He did it at the Olympics. He did it at the Gold Cup. He's doing it again. It's not going to happen here. This is your time. Jimmy Lozano gave him 60 minutes to put in a forward who has, what, 4 caps?
Yep.
4 caps, and who's 29 years of age. No pedigree with the Mexican national team, no real international future, and he'd rather him on the field than Santi Jimenez here. It tells you a lot.
I think Mexico was more dangerous.
They were. That may be circumstantial, but Memo Martinez certainly found the ball more and looked to be more dangerous, but I see a player right now that is clearly frustrated.
Is he overrated, Ale? Overhyped?
Well, I think, and maybe I'm speaking out of term here, but the Mexican media are the type that when things are going well, we are the very best ever in the history of mankind. And when things are not going well, then we go into, we're going to break you down. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's not specific just to the Mexican media, because we're having that same discussion about England in the Euros, and we're having that same discussion with Brazil and so on and so forth. But
you're not wrong about Mexico.
No, I think you're spot on.
But that is the reality of being the center forward for a national team. And let me just say this. As a former center forward of a national team who struggled to score goals consistently, that would be me, I can guarantee you, with 100% certainty and knowledge, that when this guy breaks wide open in front of the goalkeeper, Rafael Romo, and gets him behind, he has 1,000 thoughts going through his head. Because all the conversation, all the pressure, all the rhetoric, all the narrative has been around Santi Jimenez, and none of it has been positive. And whether he likes to admit it or not, he's hearing the noise. And that attempt at a finish was from a player that is very much hearing the noise. It was a wild swing at an attempt that, frankly, was made actually simpler by the fact that Rafa Romo had come out. It is a bouncing ball with a goalkeeper that has come out already, and it is a dink over the top. And if you don't like that option, the dink over the top, then run right by Rafa Romo, because he's already committed himself. Instead, he's going with a wild, full swing that was not required. That is a player that right now is not feeling the game. It's a player that has very little instinct for the game. He's reacting to the game. And when you're in that space, that means that you're thinking. And when you're thinking too much, guess what? You're missing opportunities just like that one.
You think he'll start the 3rd game, or you think they go with Memote?
No, I think they start Santi Jimenez.
Really?
Yeah, because
he pulled him with a half hour to go.
Correct.
Needing a goal.
Correct.
That's pretty damning.
Yeah, but do not forget, Jimmy Lozano himself has told us this is a generational change. So what they're looking for is to get some of these
young
guys.
Can we look at those subs? I mean, Reyes is obviously kind of an emergency sub.
Yes.
Vega does nothing. Huerta
comes on late,
does nothing. Orbelin misses a penalty. We got the one guy I'd like to see is Piojo Alvarado. We didn't get him. Charlie Rodriguez starting the game. What in the hell was that? I mean, you have bad players, and then you got a manager who's making bad decisions, Herc.
Yeah.
Can we go to the manager with Lozano,
Can I talk about the manager really quick?
Please.
In Jimmy Lozano, you had a Band-Aid situation at the Gold Cup. The Gold Cup that was a B tournament because the United States men's national team and the Canadian national team,
Jamaica and Panama were the only 2 teams that took
decided not to send their A team. And he wins that tournament with a Santi Jimenez goal, by the way, in that very stadium. And you give that full-time job to a guy that at the club level had very little experience with Querétaro, and it didn't go his way. And then goes to Necaxa, and that also didn't go his way. But then he does a U23 tournament, which are the Olympics, because it is an underage tournament, and they win a bronze medal with these very players. So the Mexican Federation thinks, well, he knows these players. He's been with these players. These players trust him. Maybe this is the guy to lead us forward. But when I look at this coach, I see a coach who's inexperienced. And what's worse, I look at that coaching staff behind him, even more inexperienced. Not even a playing career those coaches have. So he can't even lean into that, tap into that for help. This is a guy right now grasping at straws. It's clear to me he was told, this tournament does not matter. And that is unfortunate when the Mexican Federation tells their coach that the Copa America does not matter. And what essentially for them is a home game every single game. It doesn't matter. So if that's the case, you're damn right we're going to see Santi Jimenez.
You talk about his resume being a little bit thin. How important, Ali, is that resume that the coach comes into the locker room with something that the players will respect, which clearly in this case, we know his history. He's a young coach. He just didn't have that experience yet.
I think the first question is actually to ask if the coach has everything he or she needs to succeed. I think a lot of times general managers or organizations actually just ask the players, do you have everything that you need in order to succeed? And I think it's, very few that get asked, hey, do you have all the resources and all the accommodations, everything that you need in order to succeed? All the coaches, so on and so forth, whatever it may be. And I think that's rare. And I think it's really important to not only ask the players, but the coaches. And it is extremely important to, yes, as a player, have respect for the coach coming in. Not that they have to have a long resume, as long as they are good at what they do and they treat the players with respect, they create a safe environment for everyone to succeed, and they bring in, personnel that, has earned their place to be there. I think that is what is most important.
It's kind of interesting because with Jimmy Lozano, you have to question whether he's actually the guy pulling the strings, right?
I have to question why they're listening to these players, if I'm being honest. We go back to Las Vegas when they were in the Nations League versus Mexico. Versus the United States men's national team, and the United States men's national team beat them in that semifinal game. It was Diego Coca who was in charge, and the players weren't happy with the hotel. This hotel's too far from the strip. Our family doesn't like it. The players weren't happy with the travel. The players weren't happy that they had to go 30 minutes to a training session. The players weren't happy about this, weren't happy about that. Spoke to the federation, Diego Coca's too hard on us. We don't like the 3-a-days. And guess what? Jimmy Lozano comes in. Oh, no, keep Jimmy Lozano. We're happy with Jimmy Lozano. What the hell do the players know? Honestly, I'm going to be honest. What the hell do the players know here? This is the worst generation of players. And to Ali's point, I think they actually did that, Ali. I think that's the worst thing is the Mexican Federation took stock in what these players were saying. Hey, the players are happy. Jimmy Lozano's in charge, but nothing's changing.
There's some context there in that there was a lot of negativity around the team before Lozano takes over.
Yeah.
And he's a Mexican manager. He's a little bit more friendly. There's that comfort. But I don't know that comfort is leading to good results here. Ale, do you see anything in this Mexican team worth continuing to build around?
Well, and honestly, so we can talk about Jimmy Lozano, we can talk about the federation, we can talk about the players. The truth is it's a combination of it all. But I have to give you the perspective of a player. And I wasn't a federation executive, nor was I a manager, but I was a player. And I have to believe that as a player, you want the responsibility, or at the very least, you should want to take on the responsibility of we win because of what we do on the field, and we lose because of what we do on the field. The true professionals, the true high-level performers, will take on that responsibility and will know that it's dependent upon them. It's all too easy to have this conversation about Jimmy Lozano. The truth of the matter is that these guys are having trouble completing 5-yard passes consistently. And that's not on Jimmy Lozano, and that's not on the federation. Now, you can argue that they have created the wrong sort of environment that allows these things to go unpunished, that allows this thing to happen without being any sort of consequences or repercussions. But the truth is, you look at the group of players, and they're not completing passes. And if you have ever appreciated Mexico as a national team, you knew that at the very least, at the very minimum, this team was going to be clean in possession, and they were going to knock the ball around. They can't. They don't, because they can't. Today, Venezuela, and if I can just shift the conversation back to Venezuela for a second, they were able to make this physical. Now, some of it has to do with, we talked about it, the dimensions of SoFi Stadium, but Jose Martinez was right there, tight on players. So Luis Romo sort of gets played off the park because he no longer participates in creating the rhythm for Mexico. You look at a guy like Aramburu and how tight he gets to Quiñones, and how tight. I thought Aramburu was excellent today, right back. Ali, I know you can appreciate that. He was tight to Quiñones. Quiñones was not nearly as effective as he was in the first game. He had a reduced role here, and it's actually Aramburu who gets behind Quiñones and gets taken down for the penalty by Quiñones. And so that kind of paints a picture as to Venezuela recognizes that Mexico's not good enough to pass through you as they once were. And so therefore, you can go and press them. You can go and get in their faces. To answer your question, Seb, the truth is, and I hate, and believe me when I say this, I hate to do this. I agree with you. This team is simply, right now, so incredibly limited that at times, to be a Mexican fan, a true Mexican fan, watching this as compared to what the past has been, this is embarrassing.
Ali touched upon it, and Alejandro touched upon it, about the Mexican teams of the past, how much you enjoyed watching those teams. That increases the pressure. I draw a parallel to the discussion we had about Brazil, the talent, pipeline that they had going on. Mexico was once the premier team in this zone, in this area, for the ability to hold the ball, for the ability to have individual talent. That pipeline has stopped. That's no more. And these players are feeling the repercussions of that. They're feeling the pressure from the fans of that and the media, but they don't have the resources to get out of it.
Yeah, you talk about joy as a fan. I think the only emotion that I felt watching Mexico in the last 3 years is kind of fear, like trepidation of how catastrophic, how humiliating is what's about to happen going to be. And that's kind of how I felt going into this game, is that this is a game a lot of people will say, they look at Venezuela, they look at Mexico's history. We put up the graphic, 2 wins all time for Venezuela against Mexico.
Make it 3.
And you make it 3, and you say, okay, well, Mexico should win. And yet, coming into this game, for me, there was nothing more than fear. As a defender, can you rate the Julián Quiñones tackle?
Yeah, it was very poor. I think after, and I was just telling you all that I thought he was one of the best players on the field. Quiñones, I love him in his position, and I think he always is effective. He always wants to get on the ball, and he plays attractive football. But then that mistake was just immature in that moment. And, it really put Mexico behind, obviously. And then they had to try to climb their way out of it.
And sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
It's a question that needs to be asked. Where is the leadership of this Mexican national team? And that, honestly...
Lost your captain 20 minutes into the first game.
And
right.
fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But the games don't stop coming.
Sure.
Right.
You got to have more than one leader in a team, right?
And
Cesar Montes, he gets injured.
And I just look at a team that when they're searching for answers, usually you look to your captain. So if you want to bring names from the past, you look at Pavel Pardo. You look at Garcia Aspe. You look at
Rafa Marquez.
The personalities. We can go down that path as well, although some people would argue against Rafa Marquez. But regardless, that's a different conversation. My point is, there doesn't seem to be a presence of a leader, of, look, he went down, no issues, we keep playing. He went down, no issues, we keep playing. We go down as a team, we're losing 1-0, no issues, we're going to keep playing. There is this doubt that is right now very much at the core of who Mexico is, and that doubt is not going away until you start winning consistently. And how do you win consistently is by playing well. And how do you play well is playing with confidence. But you don't have that confidence. It's a vicious cycle.
You talk about a lack of leadership. You talk about a kind of immaturity. I mean, that's what you kind of see from Mexico at the end of these games, a meltdown, an emotional meltdown. It's ugly to watch.
It's
ugly.
Putting his hands on his opponent. You have Santi Jimenez, who was very frustrated. It just seems like there is immaturity there, but this is something that's been brewing.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that in a World Cup qualifying cycle, that you're the host country, you're one of the host countries, you're not going to have these elimination games. You're not going to have the hex. So these are very important games. The Federation chooses, don't worry about these games. These games don't mean anything to us, because what they've done essentially in this generational change is tell you that the Copa America does not matter, when it really does. These are the only games of worth you're going to have.
You're leaving Memo at home. You're leaving Henry Martin at home. You're leaving Chucky Lozano off the roster. You're saying we're thinking about 26, not 24. Real quickly, let's bring it back to the team that actually won the game tonight. Venezuela are, Alejandro, guaranteed now to be into the knockout rounds. What do you think they can do once they get there? You got hopes beyond that?
Well, of course, if you're in the dance, you got a chance, right? And you got to be in the dance. And
you got to like your shot to win a group.
Yes, and that I think is the first priority, is how to handle this third match, and figuring out that, you know what? There's a possibility for you to win the group, and so therefore control who is it that you face in the next round. And it's a position that historically, I'm sure you didn't know this, but I'll remind you, we're not comfortable with that position. It's not something that we do commonly. It's not the U.S. women's national team going into the World Cup winning every single game. No. For us, going into, you saw the celebrations.
Yep.
It's of a team that knows that it has achieved something, but now it's going to take the leadership of both the players and the staff to, hey, let's celebrate tonight. But let's shift the focus now to Jamaica, because now we can dictate. Venezuela is in a position now where Venezuela can dictate, and that doesn't happen often. And we can dictate, Venezuela can dictate what happens next and who you play next. That, I think, is important. And there are no excuses. You're playing against a Jamaica team that is already eliminated. Who knows what version of Jamaica is going to show up? But you have to show up. If you're Venezuela, you do your job in maintaining the momentum. There's a few things that bother me about tournament play when the teams actually achieve qualification into the group stage or out of the group stage into the knockout stage, and then they sort of dismiss that third game as, it's all right, it's okay. No, momentum is important. Momentum is important, particularly and especially for a team like Venezuela that depends on momentum, on energy, on confidence, on belief, on playing this card of nobody believes but us. Well, I also believe that you got to win against Jamaica, or at the very least secure the first spot. And if you secure the first spot, now you're dictating your future.
A draw good enough to do it.
That's
too.
well,
Get that one
yes,
point against Jamaica.
but I don't think that should be the approach.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. That's my point. That you don't go into the game. A point is enough. No. You continue with the same mentality, because it is mentality that has got you to this point.
All right, so Venezuela guaranteed to move on. Mexico may have 1 foot out of the Copa America 2024. Let's take a look back into our green room. This was during the match. They stuck a camera in there. What moment is this? Is this the
penalty?
This is the penalty? No, this seems like first half. We're too relaxed in there.
Oh, yeah.
See, I'm moving around a lot. Ala and Herc are in the same spot always.
Somebody's more stressed than everybody else.
Yeah.
I stayed out of the way.
Yeah.
I said, I don't know. Trash cans over here.
Penalty.
Ali's in the peanut gallery.
That's a goal.
talking
That's
smack.
a penalty goal right
That's
there.
the penalty conversion,
She
right?
was definitely talking a little smack with you.
That's after the penalty miss, kick the door,
Yeah.
and out to the hallway to yes, kick some trash cans. Good, I'm glad they edited that out, and we're back to the beginning.
Oh, I think it's the one that Romo missed, right? Yeah.
I don't know. Hey, can I just give you some context on Rafa Romo? He made a big penalty kick save in the qualification tournament for the U20 World Cup.
Okay.
And that's the reason as to why Venezuela went to that World Cup. So it's not the first time that Rafa Romo makes a big save on a penalty kick.
And of course, a few big stops for Roma, including the one on Santiago Jimenez.
Was that a hip check?
Yeah.
One-on-one.
Somebody's calm and somebody's not.
And a reminder for all your Euros coverage, head over to ESPN SC. They're on 7 days a week right here on ESPN+.